Now, if you're a 20-something, I don't need to tell you that times are tough. But new research suggests that those of us in our late 30s and 40s can't rest on our laurels either. The Institute for Fiscal Studies says that pressure on pay and pensions and the astronomical cost of housing mean that people born in the 60s and 70s will be worse off in retirement than the post-war baby boomers. Here's our business correspondent, Siobhan Kennedy.
When these youngsters grow up, what will their kids be doing that their parents disapprove of?
These youngsters, the baby boomers, did grow up and became one of the most privileged generations to have ever lived. Born in a post-war world, they had it all. Consumer goods and services, all the mod cons. Workers with good pensions and home ownership. And crucially, the start of ever-rising house prices. Little did they know how good they had it back then. The truth is that successive generations since the baby boomers of the 60s have been progressively squeezed. We already knew that those in their 20s would fare worse thanks to mounting university debt and the difficulties of finding a job in a post-recession world. But what we learned today is that those in their 30s and early 40s, for the first time, would be worse off than the generation before them too. That's something that Ben Kipling knows only too well. He's 37 and works in one of London's oldest bell foundries.
I managed to buy a house, but I've got a fairly large mortgage to pay for. I've got a large season ticket to pay for each year. My actual disposable income is not a lot, and with outgoings increasing in the last few years and income only increasing ever so slightly, my disposable income is definitely less than it was only a few years ago.
Today's report shows that people like Ben have been hit hard in the wake of the financial meltdown. Wages have fallen relative to rising costs, so incomes now are no better than they were a decade ago. They're less likely to own a home, and with private and state pensions being cut, their future is far less secure.
I don't know what's going to do well and what isn't. I'm just hoping that something means that I will be all right for retirement.
It's a different story for his boss, Kathryn Hughes. The Foundry's been in her family for 4 generations. She's now 56, has paid off her mortgage and is putting aside money for a comfortable pension.
I think for all of us in my generation, you left home, you bought a house. My children don't stand a hope of doing that. And of course that then gives you your security. If we had to borrow against the house for equity, we have it. That if you've rented, you're simply putting money almost down the drain.
So how will those in their 30s and 40s cope with the shape of the future? Well, the report found they expect to inherit their wealth from guess where? Mum and Dad.
For the moment, it looks like a really important aspect of how well off you're going to be through your life increasingly is actually how much you inherit, how much your parents have, how well you do in the lottery of where you were born. That's something that's becoming more, not less important.
That's great for those parents who grew up with the high life and can now afford to pass it on to their children. But what happens to the kids of those who can't?